All right, and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we have a special guest, Stephen Karaffa. And today we are going to dive into what is horror, what is paranormal, is it all real, and can we trust anything we see on TV? But before we dive any further, remember to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, if there are any topics or guests or movies you want us to check out, please let us know in the comments below. Your engagement is key, and we definitely appreciate your viewership. So let's go ahead and dive in. Steven, how are you doing today?
Good, real good.
Excellent, excellent. So before we go any further, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what you've got going on?
I run a paranormal podcast called Madman, where we basically talk about anything paranormal. It could be anything from ghosts to UFOs to government conspiracies to aliens. I mean anything that's kind of weird or unexplained. Pretty much what my podcast covers. And
Gotcha. Did you hear about that weird alien? Was it
in
alien mummy
Mexico,
or corpse? Yeah.
yeah, that's weird. I just reading about that yesterday. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look real to me. It looks like someone kind of carved it by hand, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to trust anything that a lot of foreign governments come out because I think you don't know if it's just like you're trying to lead us down like a rabbit hole, or if it's actually real. It's really hard to you'll trust anything. Any government comes out with, because you never know if they're trying to trick people, disinformation or what's going on. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, and I remember seeing an article. I think it was either Monday or Tuesday. It was pretty recently where they were saying that it was either NASA or a government agency was actually prodding the government to be more proactive in investigating UFOs, which I thought was a bit odd because I was like, really? That's where your priorities lie right now, trying to get the government to take these things more seriously?
But I think a lot of that is because I think the only reason the Congress cares is because they want to know, right, where their money's going, because there's these huge black budgets, and Congress doesn't know where the money's going. And I think the only reason that they even care is because they want to control all the money. So I think that's a big part of why.
That's true. And plus, plus, especially right now with the whole migrant crisis, that kind of just takes things to a whole nother level,
Right. Yep.
So, so Stephen, I just want to start off. Do you what actually got you into the paranormal? What actually got you thinking, you know what, maybe this might be a topic worth taking a closer look at?
Well, when I was about 12 years old, I had an experience at my aunt's house with like a shadow person, and then I had a couple more experiences at her house, and then as I got older, I had some experiences as an adult, and basically, I kept finding myself asking, right, why, all right, why are these things happening? What are they? Is there something wrong with me? Am I crazy? So I started looking for answers, and as I started looking, I'm like, well, maybe there's other people out there that are just like me. So I thought, well, all right, I'll put together a podcast, and maybe, all right, even if I can just help one other person realize that you're not alone. That would help. And I found that there's lots of people out there in the same situations that have gone through the same things, and
Mm-hmm.
so
So if you don't mind my asking, like, was it a shadow figure that you saw, or was it like you saw like someone standing in front of you as clear as you're seeing anybody else, on the city street, like looking back at you?
So I was laying in bed at my aunt's house. I stayed overnight. I was in bed. And I woke up. It was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just woke up. I looked down at the corner of the room, and it was like a solid silhouette of a man. It was probably about 7-8 feet high. It was humongous. And
Wow.
yeah, it was. It was like it was the blackest black that you can even imagine. You couldn't see through it. There were no features. It was just a silhouette.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and I told everybody in my family, and they all laughed at me. And then about a week later, my aunt and my uncle were laying in bed, and my aunt looks over in their doorway, and there it was.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so it's ever since then, they've kind of gotten used to seeing it a lot now. They see it all the time, and it doesn't bother them anymore. But yeah, I stopped staying there after that.
But the shadow figure wasn't like doing anything harmful, like holding you down or anything, right? It was just standing there.
Right, right, yeah. Was standing there watching it, never ever, No, I mean, a couple times it's like knock things off of shelves or something, but nothing like violent or anything, or nothing, physical, other than knocking a couple things over.
Did you ever find out what the backstory was? Because I know with a lot of these paranormal shows, I know like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, stuff like that. They a lot of the times they spent a good chunk of their show going into research, saying, "Oh well, this house was built in 1882, and it turns out that the original owner, was such and such, and they went mad one day and they shot themselves, and their spirit's been haunting the house ever since." Did you find out anything similar to that?
Well, that's what was crazy about the whole thing was because all right, they built that house brand new, and before that, it was just a piece of farmland. There was never a house there or anything. So then, actually did a project on an area in school, and the only thing that I found out was there was it's called the Battle of Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a Native American battle with like the English settlers in the area. And a lot of people died, and I think when Native Americans bury their wounded or bury their dead, usually right, they build or they usually bury them up in the highest part of the area.
Yeah, they built those mounds, right?
Right, right. And anyways, right where the house is built, it's basically right, like the highest area in that whole area of the of that part of the state. So I mean, I don't know if there's maybe like if Americans up there buried maybe, and they disturbed it when they built the house. I'm not sure, but it's kind of weird because there's nothing there before the house, so I think I can really find.
Because you hear these, because when you watch a lot of these shows, 9 times out of 10, it's usually these hauntings usually occur because someone has done something to the ground itself that's been disturbed. So I actually do want to dive into paranormal TV shows. So I can so speaking personally, around 07, 08, when I was in college, I actually started watching a lot of these paranormal TV shows. I never really got into them as a kid, except for you remember Unsolved Mysteries?
Oh, I love that show. Yeah, Robert Stack. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty much the only, I guess you could call it a paranormal show that I watched. And then there was one other show, I think it was like Unexplained Mysteries or something. It had Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek on there.
Yep.
So those were the only two. I guess you can call them paranormal shows that that were around back in the 80s and 90s that I used to watch. And then as soon as 2007 hit, that's when you started seeing more of these paranormal shows come on. Because I remember my sophomore year in college, there was a show called Ghost Hunters that came out on Sci-Fi, and I began watching that religiously. And then Discovery Channel, I think around the same time, they had that show A Haunting, which was like a docudrama series. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was one other show. What was it? I should know it because the host of the show is the same age as me, and it was set at Penn State. God, what was it?
Paranormal State.
Yeah, Paranormal State. Yeah.
Yep.
Because the guy was from South Carolina and he was up at Penn State. And it was so weird because the show took place around roughly at the same time that I was in school, from 07 to 2011. So a lot of these TV shows, paranormal shows that came out, I mean they were, at that time, they were pretty novel. They were pretty gripping because they sort of ran along the same veins as Unsolved Mysteries, but at the same time they had this sort of reality show aesthetic to it. Especially with people talking to the camera and people like walking around trying to connect with spirits. Were there any particular paranormal shows around that time that stood out to you that you thought, wow, this is the best thing since sliced bread?
Definitely Ghost Hunters. You gotta watch that. As well religiously on Paranormal State. I mean, ever since I've been like a teenager, I've watched anything that I get my hands on that had to do with paranormal. The only show that I really have like a beef with is oh my god, The Ghost Adventures with Zach Baggins.
Oh god, I could go for hours talking about that.
they hype it up so much. And that guy who's bald, he's always running around screaming. Ghost investigators wouldn't be running around a place screaming like that because it's you're disrespectful to the ghost and the homeowner as well. So that show
Well,
is so unreal. It's
well, not only that, but there were a few instances that made me stop and think, is this for real? But before I go any further than that, did you read a few? I think it was like a few months ago. Nick Groff, who was a former host, he actually came out and said that Zach was actively trying to get him fired from the show. Do you remember?
no.
Yeah, he did an expose basically saying, Zach was being passive aggressive, and he was just, he waltzed into the room one day and said, "Guess who? I got Discovery to, let go." And this was like season 10. Of Ghost Adventures, because after season 10, Nick Groff wasn't on the show anymore. But I read about that, and then a few other former crew members came forward and said, yeah, the show is pretty toxic. Like, the work doesn't come as a shock to me, because when you watch that show, you kind of feel like there's a heavy-handed approach to paranormal investigation, and why don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you think that there's like a very heavy-handed approach to the way that these guys conduct investigations compared to all the other shows out there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the tools that they use, nobody else uses, and they make it seem like they have the cutting edge tools, but really, it's so subjective. I mean, you can really, it's whose ever hand that tool happens to be in. I mean, like, I think I forget what they call it. I spirit box just randomly blurts out words that it picks up somehow through the air. It's just a lot of their tools just don't seem real sound in science. It's almost like I mean, all right, you can make that device lead anyone to believe whichever way you want to go. It's very. I think a lot of their practices are very deceptive.
Very sensationalized, then, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever see that episode where they brought Annabelle the doll? Tony Spera. It was a Halloween special, and Tony Spera, who was I think he's the son-in-law of Ed and Lorraine Warren. He actually brought it in, and he kept and if you've seen it, you know what happens, right?
I
Zach,
don't think I saw that one.
okay, so it was from a few years back. They well, because Zach Bagans opened a paranormal museum or haunted museum, right?
In Vegas, yeah.
Yeah, so there was an episode where they bring in Tony Spera, and he's the son-in-law of Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigator duo, and he brings with him Annabelle the doll, and they do this investigation with Annabelle, and Zach is like kneeling in front of it, and he's like, I want to touch the doll, I want to touch the doll, and Tony's like, do not touch the doll. And Zach does the exact opposite. He touches the doll. And then Tony comes in, pissed off, and he's like, Zach, I told you not to touch the fucking doll. And he takes Annabelle away. So in my mind, as I'm watching this, I'm like, is this for real? Like, I know, I know the story around Annabelle. This is a doll that that's had some history, and if you're familiar with the stories that Ed and Lorraine Warren have told, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
there's this one where a kid back in the 70s, openly mocked the doll, and then a few hours later he gets killed in a motorcycle accident. But I feel like even then with Zach, he kind of like overhypes it to the point where it's absurd, where
Yep.
it kind of takes something like Annabelle the doll and just turns it into something that's completely ludicrous. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely don't want to spend the entire time bashing
Yeah.
bashing Ghost Adventures. But I do want to ask you. So based on your personal experience and from what you've seen on TV, how true or how real can we say these ghost hunting shows are?
I
If we bar Ghost Adventures from the conversation.
I think for the most part, a lot of them, I think they're a fairly realistic. My brother had like a local ghost hunting uh organization come to his house, and
Hmm.
they conducted all their research, kind of like ghost hunters would, or paranormal state would, kind of the same thing. So I think it's pretty close to how it's actually done in like smaller groups as well.
Right. Do they have like a psychic or a sensitive with them?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Now is that this is gonna sound like a dumb question. Is that like standard practice? Like, do they put out an ad or something saying, we need a sensitive to like come with us just in case?
I think they have. I I think really like what a lot of these groups do is they find someone who they really trust, and know that, because a lot of people claim to be psychic, and like a lot of people are good at faking it. So you really have to trust the person that you're taking with you. So I think a lot of these groups just have one or two specific people that they take with them exclusively. They don't just take anybody with them. I wouldn't think.
Right, right. Because because another thing too, because especially with modern filmmaking, it's pretty. It can be pretty easy to manipulate and fake these fake the evidence. For instance, like balls of light. For instance, so even someone with a rudimentary understanding of Photoshop, can pretty much fake that, and not to mention hundreds and hundreds of filters and apps that you can put on. So do you go into these shows with a skeptical mind frame, or are you a bit more accepting of what they're doing?
I mean, especially anything on TV. I'm kind of skeptical at first because it's hard to know what you can and cannot trust. So like I go into a lot of these shows kind of like kind of with a more skeptical view. But if as long as like it looks what what's doing is actually like something that would be done in real life. I guess that I'm not as skeptical after a little while, but they got to prove, they have to prove themselves first. It's
Yeah.
hard to trust any show. But
Yeah, because especially when 'cause especially if these shows are on like these huge networks, you know, their overall goal is to make money.
right.
So, so you kind of have to approach it with a grain of salt, because you could have something that's pretty credible, like you would see with Ghost Hunters, or something that's extremely sensationalized, like you see with Ghost Adventures. Um, so I want to move on. I want to move on to horror films in general, because a few weeks ago, Lee and I we did a review of The Nun 2, and by the way, The Nun 2 came out, I think, was it last week. Um, now 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 when we watched the trailer and we reviewed it, we pretty much came to the conclusion that modern horror films, they're pretty generic. You can have some sort of variation in what the subject matter is, but they all seem to follow a formula, and they all seem to follow the sort of rule book where you need to have X number of jump scares, you've got to shoot from a different angle, and you need to have lots and lots of blood in order to make it scary. So, so when you're going to go see these films, in your mind, you kind of have to be a bit of a smartass and say, well, how are they going to scare us this time around? Um, what is your what are your thoughts on modern horror film today? Do you think they're scary at all, or do you think that there may be a few gems out there that might be worth taking a look at?
I think for the most part, they're not as scary as they used to be. Mainly because with how advanced special effects are anymore. For the last decade or so, like movies have looked so realistic that it's just so hard. That it's I'm saying, how do you get any better than what you've already seen? And like you said, like everything just kind of seems to follow the same format over and over and over. It's not like the days of like Vincent Price. Those were the real gems. Anymore. There might be a couple out there, but I don't. I don't really watch a lot of horror movies anymore. I really watch like the older ones. It just had more. I don't know. There was just something more about you like the story back then, because they didn't have the special effects, so it had more. It just seemed like it had more of a storyline to it back, like 20, 30 years ago versus what we have today.
Yeah, yeah, like the Hammer horror films, for instance.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I totally hear you on that one, because it seems like nowadays people kind of put more emphasis on special effects to the point where you could literally have no story, but you can still have a movie because everything is just like CGI and everything. Speaking of which, what are your thoughts on the Conjuring films? Are they hit or miss or?
Um, uh, 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 I'm not a huge fan of them. I mean, I don't know. I just never really got into them. I mean, I've watched them and I just really never got into them. But
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, what the problem is that everyone's decided we're just going to try to like make a shared universe thanks to Marvel, and all of a
yeah,
sudden, and all of a sudden, you take the stories of Ed and Lorraine Warren, which are phenomenal, by the way. Like,
oh yeah,
if you sat down and read or watched the videos about their life story, about what they've investigated, they're amazing. But yet, I mean, I literally have no words to describe it because it's just so depressing to see them take something that's just so good and kind of just turn it into fodder. But that's the modern movie making machine right there. Um, so excuse me, I just had to adjust my seat for a second. Um, so Stephen, I want to ask you in terms of in terms of your experiences with the paranormal, have there been any instances where you've literally felt frightened for your life? Because I know you told us about the shadow figure at your aunt's house. Were there any other instances or any other experiences where you came across a presence and you you, you had you had this feeling, oh God, what if I don't make it?
yeah. I used to work at a local hospital in a pharmacy, and it's down in the basement. Like real close to the morgue. And everybody always talked about like the spirit of Abigail, who was like the founder of the hospital. And I just thought, yeah, they were joking. Well, then a couple times I had to work night shift. And
Right.
anyways, I worked in this room, and it was just like aisle after aisle after aisle of like medicines, and I would have to basically sit there and inventory that all night. Well, I'd be in one end of the room, and you'd hear this loud smash noise. So anyways, I walk around to the back, and like a
And
box of
sorry, this is in the basement, right? All this is in the basement. It's not like
oh yeah,
above. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So anyways, I go around the corner, and there's like a box of like glass files. Had came off a perfectly flat shelf, flipped upside down and smashed on the floor. So I didn't think anything of it. So I'm down on my hands and knees and I'm like cleaning it, and all of a sudden, the corner of my eye, I can just see like a black ball. It's maybe about the size of a beach ball, and just like it flies by the aisle. To get up and look around, and there's nothing in there, and this room's locked down. I mean, I'm the only one in there. I go back to it, and it happened 3 or 4 more times as I'm trying to clean this up, and like all
Right.
the hairs in the back of my neck, it just took all the hairs in the back of my neck stood up, and I just felt like I shouldn't be there. Yeah,
Holy
so
shit.
yeah, it freaked me out. And after that, I was a believer. I mean, I thought they were just joking, but
So how old was this hospital? Like, I imagine it must have been
oh,
pretty old if it's got a
oh
basement.
yeah, this hospital was built like the 1840s, I think, 1850s.
Oh, damn. Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, were there any security cameras or anything in the basement or?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's cameras everywhere, but like in my area, where I used to work, it was kind of hard because I mean everything was an aisle, so they just had like one camera basically in a corner watching the doors.
Okay. And were there any windows or anything? Because I know those old basements. Sometimes they used to have like those the windows I'm talking about, the ones that
Yeah,
are
like
like at the
push
very
out.
top. Yeah, yeah. Were there
Yeah.
were there anything? Was there anything like that?
Oh no, you have the solid concrete all the way around. I mean, just like one vent for the AC, and you can heat. No windows, no other doors.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
completely sealed.
So is that the only encounter that you had, or were there
There
any
or
others?
um
Yeah, yeah, in that basement.
oh like a lot of times what happened is like carry so anyways right we'd be playing music. You have the radio up on the front counter, and
Hmm.
you'd be back counting. All of a sudden, right, you have the radio. The dial was physically turned down, and you'd go back and turn it back up. And it kept turning itself down. And in the turn of line, then right, you literally had to take the knob and turn it. But there's
Hmm.
no one else in the room there to turn it. I mean, constantly. And there's just a lot of times, when you be in there, by yourself at like late at night, and you just felt like uneasy, and your stomach would kind of feel like, like it's just weird feelings down there.
Wow. Um. Or so just out of curiosity, where are you? Um.
I'm in northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm about I don't know if you've heard of like Scranton Wilkes-Barre area.
Yeah.
I'm
I've heard of
I'm
that
about an
area.
I'm about an hour I'm about an hour southwest of there.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because that part. Yeah, because that part of Pennsylvania. Oh, I should say Pennsylvania in general. I mean, you hear a lot of ghost stories from that area. So um, actually, I'm not that surprised.
Yeah,
To
there's a
hear
lot of
about
old
that.
buildings. Yeah, there's a lot of old buildings. A lot of old buildings and structures here from 17, 1800s. So there's been lots of death here, lots of tragedy that's happened. So yeah, it
That's where
doesn't
the
surprise.
Allegheny was it the Allegheny it's that big famous prison everybody talks about. It's the one that I
Oh,
hear about all the time.
Western Penn Penitentiary, or no, Eastern Penn. That's the one where ghost hunters have that video of like the ghost run down the catwalk and then turn around and running back. That was done by Philadelphia.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I was thinking about because as soon as you said you're in Pennsylvania, and I automatically thought about that Western Allegheny I think it was asylum or prison or something.
I think
That's
that's by
like
Pittsburgh. What you're talking about? Yeah, by Pittsburgh.
okay, gotcha. But even then, like you'll have a lot of haunted prisons up there too, right? And
Oh
and
yeah.
and and asylums. Have you ever been to these places? Have you ever gone on a tour or
Yeah, I was on a tour of the um of, of Eastern Penn.
okay?
That was cool. That was a cool tour to go on.
Yeah,
It was like a
now
guided tour.
okay. I was gonna ask if you actually went by yourself and did all that.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
All right.
Because because I'm here in North Carolina, and I mean, really, unless you live in the mountains or if you live near the Outer Banks, we really don't get much in terms of ghosts. The only I really the only haunted places that I know of, like in like where I am in North Carolina, because I'm in the Charlotte area. The only the only ghost story that I know of is the devil's. I think it's called the devil's tramping ground or the devil's stomping ground, and it's probably like 2 or 3 hours away from where I am. But apparently, there's a circle um, out in the middle of the woods, and and the legend goes that the devil came to earth one night, came to that part of North Carolina, and was just walking around in circles and was trying to figure out how to basically be a torment to mankind. And the legend goes that as he walked around in circles, all the foliage around him burned to the ground. So when he left, nothing would ever grow over there. And the story goes is that people who go to that circle, they've actually run tests, like college science departments have actually run tests, and they've concluded nothing can grow within that circle, which is pretty freaky.
That is weird.
Another Yeah, and another story is that is that if you leave something in the circle at night, when you come back in the morning, it'll disappear. So
Wow, that's
so
creepy.
I've wanted to test that theory out. The only problem is I haven't found anybody willing yet to go with me to conduct it, because and it's funny too, because even though a lot of my friends claim to not believe in that stuff, when I bring that up, they're like, you know what, I really don't want to go out into the middle of the woods at night and to see if something's gonna pop up. And I'm like, well, it's a bit weird, because I thought you said you didn't believe in this stuff, and then all of a sudden you're backing out on that. But but I did want to bring something up, because speaking from personal experience, I haven't had any real paranormal experiences, but I but what I can say is that a lot of the people that I know, even those who claim to be atheists and don't believe in God, they still have this sense. I don't know if you want to call it a sense or sort of inclination, but they believe that there's like a supernatural presence. They believe that there's something else out there that's far greater than themselves. Whether you want to call it God or the devil or ghosts or whatever. Um, and what I think is so fascinating is that in spite of their profession that they don't believe in anything higher than themselves, they still think it's a bit weird to come into contact or to mess with the paranormal. um have you experienced anything similar to that in your circle or in your encounters with other people or on your podcast?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I have a lot of friends and people that have come across my podcast too, who you don't claim to believe in these types of things, but as soon as like you want them to do something, or they start backing out, just like you're saying, like they don't want nothing to do with it. So it's like, if there's nothing there, then what are you afraid of? It's
Exactly. I think the biggest thing that kind of gets people up in stitches is the Ouija board. You know,
yeah. I've
it's
told
like
all my kids growing up, I told my kids, I don't care what you guys have toy wise, but there's no Ouija boards in my house. Absolutely not.
and it's weird too, because when you look at it, it looks like an innocent toy. It looks like an innocent board that you, that no one would think any differently of. And what's funny too, and I'm sure you've seen this too. I mean, you go to any drugstore or any dollar store or big box store, you'll see those Ouija board decorations. Stuff
Okay.
that you can hang on your front door for Halloween. And yet, for whatever reason, like all the other decorations, like the pumpkins or the witches or vampires, they're sold out like that. But the little Ouija board's just sitting there all by itself.
Yeah,
Nobody's
yeah.
nobody's touching it.
There's been a lot of stigma around them. I mean, I don't mean, there's something to it. I don't know. I just don't want to take any chances. I mean, I've heard so many stories about people, using them, and then they open up some kind of a doorway, and then that's it. Their house is haunted because they don't know how to close it, and I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll pass.
Yeah, and I grew up Roman Catholic, so I remember people telling me, do not don't mess with the Ouija board because that's the gateway to the devil. That's how the devil gets an entry into your life, and just by doing that, you're giving him legal rights to do whatever it is. I'm like, really, from a little board now. Personally, now speaking from personal experience, I've never messed with the Ouija board. I have no intention of messing with the Ouija board. I just think it's fascinating that people are just so enthralled by this little thing. And I've heard, I've seen those stories. I've seen it on those paranormal shows, and I've watched, and I've watched those videos. I mean, Stephen, recently I've started watching videos where they're interviewing priests, and and these are exorcists for like dioceses all over the United States, and they're all saying the same thing. They're like, yeah, usually with these possession cases or these haunting cases, it usually starts out with someone messing with the Ouija board. Um, I was going to ask if maybe you could maybe regale us with maybe like a story or an encounter that you've heard of or you've had with Ouija boards.
Well, in the same house, my aunt lives. The shadow person. My aunt, or my cousin, she used to play the Ouija board in her bedroom all the time. And like, I mean, like, I never actually seen anything there, but like, right, if you go into her bedroom for whatever reason, even now, and I mean, she's been moved out of that house for 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you walk into her room, it just feels so like uninviting. It's cold in that room. I mean, even in the middle of summer, that room is cold. The hair on your arm stands up. It's just freaky being in there. I mean, like, nobody wants to be in there. They use it for storage. Her dogs won't even go. Your man's dogs are right. Your dogs are won't even go into that room.
Oh yeah, that's a huge sign. If the dogs don't go in, that means there's something wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there like a weird smell, like a sulfuric smell or anything?
No. I mean, it's kind of musty because I mean it's just like used for storage now. But I mean, it's not like a sulfur smell or anything. It's just
Okay.
eerie. It's just really eerie in that room.
Wow. And she used to do it all by herself, or did she have friends, with her when they were doing that?
Sometimes with her friends, sometimes by herself. But I mean,
Gotcha.
she was like
Gotcha.
addicted to it for a good year and a half, 2 years. I mean, she was. I mean, I'm addicted to it, doing it nonstop. When she had free time, she was in there playing with it.
Oh wow! And this is before video games too, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Super Nintendo was out then, so but I mean, she wasn't into video
Okay,
games. She just, yeah.
gotcha. I remember I was watching this movie. What was it? It was a Spanish movie. I think it was Angelica or Angelique, or I forget what it was. Hold on. But basically it was this but basically it was about this teenage girl who and her friends were playing with the Ouija board. And what happened after that was that after she started playing with the Ouija board, a lot of weird things began to happen to her, and she eventually ended up getting possessed, and she died. And this was based on an event that happened in Spain in 1990. It was either 92 or 93. What was that? I'm trying to find out what the name of that movie is. Have you ever heard of that?
No,
Excuse me. Have you ever heard that story before?
no.
What was it? Because there was I originally heard about it on the Lights Out podcast, and then that got me interested, and then I started watching that movie. I should really kick myself in the ass for not knowing this, but 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 apparently oh, Veronica, the movie's called Veronica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so basically what happened, and this was based on a true story that happened in Spain. Apparently what happened was this girl and her friends were playing with the Ouija board in the school library, and I believe it was a Catholic school in Spain. But what happened was a teacher found them and put an end to it. But a few days afterwards, the girl began to act very strange, and she began to grow more and more erratic until eventually she got sick and died. And there were all these hauntings that were occurring before she died. Like, like there was one instance where her and her mother were in the bathroom, and the door just slammed shut by itself, and there was no way for them to open the door. Even when the dad came and tried to break the door down, like it took them a while before that door opened. But 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 I remember hearing that the police actually were called to the apartment to investigate, and they even said, yeah, there's a lot of weird things going on here. I don't think I want to go in there. And this is the Spanish police too. I mean, you think that they wouldn't be afraid of any of that stuff, but they were like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just gonna stay out in the hallway. I'm not gonna mess with that. Uh, so that definitely piqued my interest right there. Um, I was I was also gonna mention too. Did you ever see that documentary Demon House?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, have you ever heard of the Ammons case in Indiana?
Yeah,
It's that
I've heard the case. Yep.
okay? Yeah. Now, just a disclosure, this involves Zach Bagans, but we'll we'll just steam on ahead. But basically, it's a documentary about the Demon House incident, and Zach purchases that house, and a lot of the in the first few minutes of the movie, he goes on to explain like what exactly happened with the Ammons family, and he was basically documenting what happened during his personal investigation of the property. Like one of his crew members went crazy and started seeing a goat-headed figure, and then Zach spent the night at the house, and then the following day he had developed an eye condition where he now has to wear those those shades that he wears. Apparently that's to compensate for his messed up vision after spending a night at the house, and he ended up tearing the place down. as a result, which I thought was pretty reckless
Yeah.
if you think about it, because um and I remember too, because the police were called to investigate a break-in at that property, and Zach was saying, well, I think there might have been a break-in, can you go and take a look? And the officers were saying, yeah, we're not going to the house. And one of the officers says, if you want to just tear that place down, and another officer says, well, do you have an idea of what that thing is doing? It's plugging whatever's in the house. If you tear that house down, there's no telling what you could unleash on the world.
Right.
And my blood ran cold when I heard that, because I'm like, shit, I did not think about that. Um, but but I remember there was a story in Pennsylvania a few years back that involved a very prominent political figure in a haunted house. Was it Brownsville, or was Brownsville Road or something? You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because the guy was, because I think the guy was either a senator, or he was running he was running for a pretty high political office. So
Trying to think what
I'm gonna Google that right now.
I can't recall that off the top of my head. Yeah, I know what you're talking about though.
Is it Brownsville, or what was it? Wanted. What's in Pennsylvania? Because I remember that was like, that was a huge deal back in the day, because I remember hearing about that, and I was like, there's no way that this actually happened, because considering how prominent the guy was, I was like, there was no way this would happen to someone big. Like, granted, like, it's a haunted houses are real, hauntings do happen, but they don't happen to big name people like that. They're too smart for that.
Yeah.
Shit, it's gonna bother me now. Now I'm gonna be like up all night trying to figure out what was that case. But but you know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
Do you did you have any have any experiences, or I guess encounters with with anything demonic? Because I know you did mention about the shadow figures and Abigail. Did you ever encounter anything that kind of bordered on something that was terrifying on the demonic level?
I don't think so much anything like that. No, thankfully. I mean,
Okay. But have you ever heard of any encounters like that?
not so much
That
in this
happened to you personally?
area. No,
Okay,
no. I mean, this area out here is pretty good, but
gotcha. Which is odd, because usually like that part of the country, like, it's pretty old, so you would figure there's like a lot going on over there.
yeah. I mean, it's a pretty peaceful area of Pennsylvania, so I don't think a lot of bad things have happened here. I mean, the only thing I know like bad, I guess that happened was in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, which is like right right close to where I'm at. There was a group called the Molly Maguires. It was the Irish coal mining mafia. They hung a bunch of members in a tree.
Oh,
And that tree was like in like the parking lot of the old middle school. And I mean, yeah, the tree got hit by lightning like 2 or 3 times, and it was dead, but like it wouldn't fall over. I mean, that tree was there for 50 years dead till it finally went. But other than that, nothing really bad really happened around here.
gotcha,
It's pretty
gotcha.
mellow.
So I wanted to ask you, seeing as Halloween is coming up pretty soon, do you like have any like traditions, or anything, or any particular things that you do for that holiday?
Well, we have the biggest Halloween. Well, I think it's the biggest Halloween parade on the East Coast. It's right around here, which is always cool. It's usually about an hour and a half long parade. We go to that, and that's really about it. I like to watch like a bunch of horror movies and stuff. You know, a couple weeks still leading up to Halloween, and
Hmm. Are there any particular movies or TV shows that that stand out to you that you really really love and you can't get enough of?
a TV shows. I don't know if it really qualify as like horror or not, but like Stranger Things. Love Stranger
Hmm.
Things, and I can't get enough of that show. Yeah, show's great. I mean, yeah, the Stephen King stuff, especially like the older Stephen King stuff. Love his movies.
Right.
Yep.
So I was going to ask, did you see the trailer for the Fall of the House of Usher that's supposed to come out next month?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, it's supposed to be an adaptation of an Edgar Allan Poe story, and it's got a certain Mark Hamill in it,
Oh.
and I think he plays I think he plays a family lawyer from the looks of it. So that should be quite interesting. And then you got, I think that's Bruce Campbell who's playing the family patriarch. So that's another interesting thing to see. But
Oh, he's from the Evil Dead series, right? He was Ash, right? Bruce
no,
Campbell?
no, not Bruce Campbell. Bruce Greenwood. Sorry.
Oh, Greenwood. Okay.
Yeah. He was the guy who played Captain Pike in the Star Trek movies.
Okay.
The, the ones with Chris Pine. But I thought that'd be a pretty that might be a pretty interesting series to take a look at, even though I am skeptical about horror. So Stephen, if people want to reach out to you, or if people want to learn more about your work, where can they go?
We're on Spotify. It's Mind of a Madman podcast. You can also reach out to us. Our email is mind of a Madman podcast 21@gmail.com. Reach out to us if it's, if you got a story you want to tell us. If it's just, it's just something silly like, I saw this, or, if you have any questions, I check that email often, so you'll definitely, send us something there. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Stephen, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, and I'm definitely looking forward to having you back on, because I definitely feel like there are many other things that we can take a look at. But yeah, other than that, I just want to thank everybody for checking us out here on YouTube and Spotify. And remember to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and have a great day. Bye.